Hello, Daniel Yuck here. Thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate you. In today's video, I want to dive into part 2 of how I go about tattooing clouds. As you can see, half of this cloud section is done. We did this in part 1. I will leave links for you in the description below to the other parts, and as well as in the card section up here, so you can check those out if you haven't. We are now jumping into part 2, and I want to show you all another way that I do go about tattooing clouds. After this, we are going to open up a third part where we actually put our learnings to the test. We will be tattooing this together. So by the end of these videos, you will have a good understanding as to why I go about tattooing clouds the way that I do and how I go about tattooing clouds. However, should you have any questions at any point throughout this video, I'm going to highly encourage you to drop a comment down below. I will do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Please don't forget to hit my subscribe button for me and ring my bell, as I'm going to be bringing more videos like this for you all. I do also have social medias under the same name as this YouTube channel. I would truly appreciate your support over there as well. If you enjoy my channel and find my videos helpful, consider becoming a Patreon or sending over a super thanks, as I would truly appreciate your support. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive straight on into part 2. Taking it from the top, part 1, I used hard tattoo lines to go ahead and map out the cloud area as you see. So on these clouds right here, it tends to be more darker and saturated on the lower parts of the cloud. That's because I did lines and then I shaded off of those lines. Now for this side, part 2 is going to consist of tattooing clouds with no lines, and the idea and method behind it is almost identical to here, just minus the lines. There are a few little variations that I'm going to change up as well in between. I'm going to touch base on all of that here. So part 1, we did these clouds using lines and shading. Part 2, we are going to use just shading. Now you want to determine what type of clouds you're going for, what type of textures you want. You also want to determine if you want lines within your tattoos or if you don't. So all of these are things to think about, as I stated in part 1, before continuing the tattoo, as knowing what type of clouds we want from our efforts is going to determine the type of gear, or the gear that we're going to be using, the needles that we're going to pick, as well as the inks. Since I am using no lines for this tattoo, I feel that I could approach it either with a round mag or even something as small as a 3-round liner. Keep in mind that this is going to vary from artist to artist. I would say use what you feel comfortable using. For me, I'm going to feel comfortable using this Rain 005 round liner to shade these clouds right here. And again, I encourage you to use what you want and what you're comfortable with on your end. I'm also going to be using a dynamic gray wash set, and they have different tones of 20, 40, 60, and 80. For those who have watched part 1, you'll know the gray wash set that I'm using. However, I still will link you below so you can check that out on your end. So right here, I'm using the dynamic gray wash. I have straight black dynamic over here to the far left, which is the darkest. I have 20, 40, 60, and 80. That is my ink setup right here. I'm also going to be using the CNC Q2 Terminator tattoo machine along with the Inkclaw wireless power supply. And again, links will be for you in the description below. Here is my needle depth, and I'm going to be running these shadings at 5.5. I'm going to start from right here and work my way this way. Now, I'm going to list off every single step that I make along the way, so by the end of this video, you'll be well acquainted why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. For this tattoo, I'm going to stick with the same workflow that we did on part 1, and I'm going to work from the bottom on up. And I'm going to use these in different increments. So I'm not going to start with straight black this time. On part 1, I started with straight black, so that way I could line the clouds and get the darkest points right here. I'm not going to do it that way with part 2. This way in part 2, I'm actually going to start with the 80%, and I'm going to start shading with that, maybe even the 60, and then I'm going to be working my way on up. So I'm going to go ahead and actually start with the 60. And then I'm going to dip into the 80 when I want to kind of finalize some areas here. So that's how I'm going to approach it. And then from here, I'm just going to begin inputting the ink like I normally would. Now, since I am using just shading, I want to approach it the same way that I did in part 1, where I want to establish where I want my darkest point to be. And then I want to work off of that. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here, but just using whip motions and pendulum motions to build up saturation. And we're going to notice by the end of these clouds, there isn't going to be any hard apparent lines, and there is going to be a little variation in between these clouds here. So you can see I'm getting the darkest point going here, and again, you can use 60 or 80. Right now I'm using 60 just to get the boundary, so to speak, established. Now I dipped into the 60 and then I dipped a little bit into the 80 as well. And I want to take my time building these up. I want to try to get the smoothest shading that I can possibly get here. Dipping back into the 60, and then what I can do is I can keep it going this way here. Whenever we are using a just shading method, you always want to be confident in the application. You want to be confident where you're placing your lighter and darker areas. You want to be confident in the choices that we're making, so that way we have that readability there. We want to kind of execute everything with a plan, so to speak. Trust the process along the way as well. So right now I'm going to dip back into the 60 and then just continue building off from here. Just like in part 1, we did the darker areas right here, which was 80 to 60%, and then this middle part right here would be 40, and then up here is going to be 20. So darker to lighter, and we're just trying to keep it simple for now. So all I'm doing essentially is establishing the darkest points. I'm figuring out where I need my darkest points to be, and then I'm working off of those. And you can do this with the round mag. Find what feels comfortable for you. If a round mag feels more comfortable, then go for the round mag. I wouldn't recommend prioritizing time. If it takes you a little bit longer to apply it with a different needle, but you like the results, then I would recommend going that route there. I'm still working off the 60 right now. I haven't stepped on over into the 80 just yet. So you can see where I want areas more dark and defined, I'll work those areas a little bit more. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of finalizing all this area right here. I can even go back over it with maybe like a 40, so that way we don't go too dark. But this is supposed to be the darkest point. So all I'm doing right now is I'm building off of what's there, and I'm going to repeat that down here. And I'm still using the 60. When I dip into 80, I will be sure to let you know. So you can see I just simply follow the stencil that's here using different whip motions. The cross hatching going on there. And again, I'm just purely shading here, so the entire process, we're going to want to make sure that if we're applying it right, then we need to be able to trust that process and trust that we know where we're going with it all. For me, it's going to take some patience and layering to get where I want to get in terms of visual appearance with these clouds. So the idea is to patiently layer different tones over one another until you reach specific desired results. Moving at 5.5 volts using a 00 5-round liner. So you can see that I start here in this stencil line and I whip out this way, creating the darkest point right here in this area. And then what I can do is go back and shape it up a little bit more, and that's what I'm doing with every single one. Still using 60 right now. I could move on to 80 should I choose to do so, but I think I'm going to save that 80 for last, for the last part when I want to kind of smooth things out. I'm going to keep working off of this 60% though. Me personally, as I'm paying attention to the 5-round liner, I don't like necessarily how big some of these dots are looking there, so I switched over to this Emalla 003-round liner to finish applying this tattoo, as I want more fine dots. I don't want the dots to be a bit big, and you can do that. If you're not liking the results of a specific configuration that you were using, simply change it out to something that's more ideal for your task at hand, and that is also okay too. But just notice that we're going to do that with every one of these clouds right here. We're just going to simply build it up, and I'm still using 60%, have not changed. Now, since this bottom part is the darkest part that I want, I'm going to make these areas a bit darker. And instantly I like the textures that I'm getting with the Emalla 3-round liner. So for me personally, one thing that I did learn is that I personally prefer to stipple with a tighter configuration such as a 3-round liner, just because I can be far more precise. Even in like some tighter areas, if I have to use a little bit of dots, I will. to go ahead and just kind of fill in and smooth out areas. So that's looking right, that's looking nice, and you can see though that they look very similar. However, there's hard lines within these clouds and there's not any over here. So for me, I can definitely see the subtle difference, and I think that it's going to be to each their own. Whatever cloud type you feel best fits your design, by all means. And I'm pretty sure it may not even be one of these here. It could be different types. There's multiple ways to go about doing clouds is what I'm trying to say. So kind of take what you want, leave what you don't. I do hope that I'm able to help you in some manner here in this video today. So I'm gradually building up this entire area with 60 still. Just a little bit of dots here. I'm going to apply some cross hatching to smoothen this out here. Even still using the 60%, we're able to get some pretty nice dark saturation there. Just gonna match this side up over here. A little bit more. So I'm gonna do some cross hatching to smooth things out right here. As I mentioned in part 1, I think that some clouds with no lines would be good for like script and font based tattoos, and then if we're doing tattoos with a lot of details, I think that maybe hard lining would be a way to go as well. I think it's artist choice, to each their own really. That part looks about right for me. I may go back later on and add more darker areas, but for now we're going to proceed to this part right here, the middle, with 40%. So right now I'm using 40%, and I'm going to do these middle areas right here. Where I'm placing the needle down first, that's the darkest area. So again, I'm just establishing that boundary, and then from there I kind of lock everything in place. And I'm using 40% now. think a little bit of cross hatching going this way. Would be nice. Kind of smooth things out there. So I'm not sure if they look the same to you, but right here in person I can see the difference. It is a dramatic difference, hard lines versus no lines. So to some it may be subtle, others it may be apparent. For me, I can definitely see the difference right there. I'm going to continue using the 40% right here. So what I'm doing right now is I'm laying down the first layer again, which is kind of like the boundary, letting me know where I want my darkest point to be, and I'm building from there. Add one more layer right here. And then a little crosshatch over to smooth things out. Keep in mind that's still 40%. That looks good. A little bit of dots here to correct some minor issues there. So you can see that I'll just layer up until I'm happy with the results that I'm going for. Still using the 40, I'm going to use the 40 for the whole middle section. What I'm doing is placing down the first layer here, and then we build from there. Still using the 40. Try to remain as consistent as I can when I'm applying each individual line there. And then from here, I'm going to do a little bit of cross hatching, following the shape of the cloud, and then bring it on up. And I'll go back and add another layer going back this way. You get the idea. So all I'm doing is, again, I'm just building up these layers to get to a certain level that I want to get to. So you'll notice I do use dots from time to time, just to get into little tight areas. Shaping the edge of the cloud here. We're still at 40%. As you see, I'm cross-hatching this way now. And then I can go back in and shape. And that section is done with the 40%. Now we can make certain areas darker should we choose to do so, or we can move on up to the top, which is going to be the 20%. We could even use 40 as well.
A bit more sculpting right here, just a little bit more before I proceed.
That's perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and move on up to the top over here. For up here, I'm going to navigate to the 20%, and we're going to do the exact same thing, just build up from there.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape this cloud right here. And this is how I go about building up clouds with no lines. Me personally, I prefer the 3-round liner as it has like a smoother look to it. But if you like round mags, to each their own. And I'm going to keep doing that the entire way through.
So I'm laying down the barrier right here of where I want my clouds to sit, and I'm going to continue that until I'm done. And I'm always going to use the 20, or I'm still going to use the 20% here all the way through this last cloud right here. So once I have a foundation in which I know I'm not going to be going past, or barriers, and once I have the first layer of shading down, I just go back in and begin shaping everything up and smoothing everything out here. Still using the 20%. What I am doing is I'm just building up off of these layers. I didn't want to over talk for you all. I'm supposed to just kind of letting you observe here. I don't want to rant too much. So all I'm doing is I created the boundaries in which I know where the clouds are going to sit, and then from there I start applying everything and building it up and smoothing things out, all using the 20%. And I'm just going to build this last little area up right here, and then I'll take another look at it and see if there's anything else I want to do. If I want to put some areas darker, I can do so. You get the idea. Just need this last little area up here and right here. So right here is what we are working with. Allow me to pull it this way to see if we can kind of compare and contrast right here. So here we have hard lines and here we have just shading. It is a very subtle difference. However, there is still a difference and it is there. Now from here, what I want to do is I want to take a look at everything. If I feel some areas should be a bit more darker, I can go ahead and do that right now. I encourage you to really take a look at it and take a look at all the areas. If there can be more smoothness in certain areas, if you want to go darker or even more out in certain areas, I recommend to do that right now. Go the extra mile. Picture this a client and always try to go above and beyond for each and every tattoo that you do. So for those who wanted to see a visual difference, this is what it looks like when we have hard lines versus no lines at all. So there is a difference dramatically, and depending on what tones we're using and where we put darks and lights, that all contributes to the final read of the clouds. But this is the cloud results up close for those who want to see this up close here. Here are the final results from part 1 and part 2. Now there is a difference. The hard lines are more pronounced on part 1 over part 2, and part 2 does have a smoother round over part 1. So there is some subtle differences and minor variations. All in all, that is how I go about tattooing clouds. Should you have any questions about anything that you saw or heard throughout this video, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below, and I'm going to do my absolute best to assist you in the best possible direction. Now, these are just some simple ways that we can go about doing clouds. We will go ahead and get into more advanced ways for clouds later on, but for now, I decided to keep it simple for these first few parts, then we can kind of gradually progress from there. I hope that you can find something within this video that you can use on your end to better your tattooing abilities. I appreciate you tuning in. Please, before you go, don't forget to hit my subscribe button for me and ring that bell, as I'm going to be bringing more videos like this for you all. I do also have social medias under the same name as this YouTube channel. I would truly appreciate your support over there as well. If you find my channel helpful and enjoy my videos, consider becoming a patron or sending over a super thanks, as I would truly appreciate your support. Thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning in. You have a great day.